recording. I'm gonna move this here. Because I feel like. So ordinarily in this class, I would show you my listing presentation, and it would be basically what I'm showing to my clients. So if you don't mind, because I think it'll be more beneficial for the people on Zoom to see me and what we're discussing over my listing presentation, because it's really just something that I can. I'm just gonna kind of use it as a guide for me. Okay. So, has anyone here been on the listing presentation? Barry's definitely been on one. So essentially, this is when you get your chance to shop. We do all of this work to get to lead gen. We want to get to the, this appointment. You get to the appointment, you need to be prepared for it. So my listing presentation looks a little something. I'll show you guys here like this, and it'll also be available on the PC dashboard, which is basically something that's easy
On the
for
what
me.
dashboard?
There's a productivity coaching dashboard. I can send it to you too. So it's essentially just what I provide for services, some client testimonials, stuff like that. So to start, your listing presentation is going to be showing what your value is. And I think as a new agent, that can be hard to articulate just because you don't know a ton about the process. So once you do get the presentation, the appointment, what you want to bring is some sort of, and if you're in the coaching program, we'll be working together on basically putting together some sort of visual. You don't need to have a visual. When I first got into real estate, my listing presentation was not a presentation. It was a conversation. It was the appointment. I brought the mark. Really, the only presentation I had was the CMA. And for those of you who have computers here, I'm going to be making you run one today. So, do you have a computer here? Do you have it on the car?
Me? No.
I'll do all of you. So basically, to start, you want to have some sort of visual, in my opinion. It just sets you apart because a lot of agents aren't going out of their way to do this. You can't have a really nice, beautiful visual and then not know what you're talking about though, because that is not going to save you. But it's showing, wow, this person goes the extra mile. So they'll do that when they sell my home. You also want to, you can do that on a computer and iPad, but if you don't have a computer, you don't have an iPad, you're not comfortable doing something like that, you certainly don't have to. A CMA. So how many people here have run a CMA? Run a CMA? Mary's run a CMA.
I really don't know how to do it well. It takes a long time.
It does. It does take some time. So that is
Where did you learn to write so neatly, vertically like that?
where? I did go to Catholic school.
There you go.
This was my COVID hobby though. I did hand lettering, and then because my brother was getting married and they were gonna pay somebody, and I was like, I got time. I'll just learn
That's
how
one
to
of
do
the
this.
skills I would kill for.
It's practice, just like anything else. It's practice. Oh, we got here. Admit. Hello, everybody. Okay.
Sarah, I'm gonna try to come back.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
It's funny because my brother went to parochial school and he's got great handwriting.
You can't go to recess.
Oh, yeah.
They don't let you go to recess. They're like, nope, you're
And
gonna stay in practice.
He made my parents send him to Brookline High when he went to high school because he hated it with the nuns. But
Yeah, they are scary.
his penmanship is
On point, probably on point. So the most important, and if you're gonna take all of your time doing anything, you want it to be the CMA, you do not want it to be this visual. The visual is something nice and you might develop it, which is why I like to do in the business development program. I like to start you out with it. For me, I did a few listing appointments without a visual, and then when I added, I just saw a huge difference. So I like to put something simple together for you guys. And we would normally be reviewing them, but because we're having some technical difficulties today, we're gonna run this class every 12 weeks. I am changing it every time I do it, just based on feedback and based on, participation and just ways that I can improve. But overall, you'll be able to see my listing presentation again. So we're gonna do a CMA. I'm not gonna have you do it right now. but it's a comparative market analysis. We went over this a little bit last week. And also, please excuse my spelling, I heavily rely on autocorrect. So we discussed this a little bit with the buyer section because it's important to know how to do it too. Like if you're putting in an offer and you think a house is overpriced, you want to know the value of the home, the true value of the home, and you want to be able to figure that out on your own. It's basically comparing properties that are similar to the property that you're trying to market so you can get an opinion on price. And I'm gonna make you guys do it, but another thing that we're gonna go over is lightly, because this is what Debbie teaches, is contracts. You want to bring the contracts right to the listing appointment. You're way more likely to get them to sign it if you present it right there. Not everyone's going to, but contracts you want to have are going to be mandatory disclosure. And if you have a coaching binder, you can open that up, and under the seller section in your coaching binder will be all the coaching contracts. If you haven't met me yet, if you're new on the call, you don't have your coaching binder yet, you'll get one. And it'll have all of the contracts that you need for a seller, really in the order that you should do that. But you want to have a mandatory disclosure. You want to have an exclusive listing agreement.
That's what
And
the option for,
designated agency. Yep. You can do I believe there's a dual.
right, but don't, we- in this office, don't we have to have the designated agency?
Yeah.
Because we're all designated.
Yes, it's the industry norm. When we first got into things, it wasn't, because it's not how they did it. Now, this is how they do it. Debbie will be able to give you probably an entire breakdown on why and how that happened. That's why we love Deb. That's what she's talking about. Yeah, she's a compliance queen. You're also gonna, if the house was built before 1978, you need to have a lead fee form. This is super important. And you're not just printing the last sheet. A lot of the times in the MLS, you'll see it like, pop up. Sorry, I'm just moving that. A lot of times in the MLS, you'll just see the lead paint, like, and especially if you're buyer heavy as a new agent, which tends to happen. You'll see just the last page of the lead paint form. So maybe when you have a listing agreement, you might just assume that's all you need. No, what that is basically saying, I've given you the 60 pages or however many pages it is ahead of this. 60, it's not 60, it's probably like 20.
10.
Is it 10?
I think it's 10.
It feels like heavy, probably because it gives me a lot of anxiety.
Maybe it's 11 sheets of paper.
Yeah, well, either way, there's a lot of disclosure that goes with that, and what that is I'm acknowledging that you've given it to them, they've read it, they understand it, you've explained it to them. Their responsibility to disclose if there was lead paint in their home that they're aware of. In New England, a lot of the homes are older. We run into this a lot where people are like, well, how do I know? It's one of those very gray areas why you should take any sort of lead paint class. You're also gonna need the wire fraud advisory and an audio video recording advisory. With like rings and everything going on now, we're needing those across the board, because if you would know the law, I think you definitely know the rules on recording. It has to be disclosed. If there's any sort of, especially audio.
Visual. Now, audio, I'm still trying to look into.
Anytime I've been in a home that is their audio recording, it is like, they let you know, because they have to let you know.
Right.
Like, you can't be recorded without your knowledge. So there's a wire fraud advisory, and it's important to have this conversation. You don't think so, but there's so much fraud going on right now that like they don't know the process. So if they get your email gets hacked and there's a message that says, hey, can you send me that first deposit, and they wire a first deposit somewhere, they don't know. So the wire fraud advisory should be a discussion that you have. Let them know I'm not gonna be asking you for any money. If you do, I'll be picking it up in person from you, a check that I will then deliver directly. You'll get copies, and it'll be clearly communicated along the way. And that should be the discussion. And then there's the audio, visual recording. So these are all like the must-haves. What I want to talk to you guys is basically about, so this is something that Debbie will go over in depth, like, what they all entail, how to present them, what they mean. It's again something I would normally briefly go over, but it's much easier if there's a visual. Another thing that you want to have a discussion with them about when you're at your listing appointment is strategic pricing. Does anyone know what strategic pricing is? Anyone here? Frank knows. You know what strategic pricing is?
It's like pricing it,
Below.
below, so that way people.
Yes.
Offers higher.
So that can be a hard discussion, and honestly, that's also something where Jamie's talking about, you have to pay attention to the market. That might not be something that we're doing much longer, because the market started to kind of even out a little bit. The competition isn't as heavy as it used to be. To me, I only see a benefit in strategically pricing a property. If it becomes a straight buyer market, no, don't do that. We'll have classes, and this class will change when that happens. But strategic pricing, you don't want to be like reinventing the wheel in your listing presentation. You don't need to be writing your own idea or explanation of what strategic pricing is. In the market analysis itself, there's an option to have a strategic pricing explanation. They have a really nice graph, really cute. I'll show you when you guys run your own CMAs shortly. And it does a really nice job of just visually showing them exactly what it does. So if you strategically price a listing 15% below what you know the value is, you're likely to get 95% more buyer. I know of an agent in the Malden area that has built her business on strategic pricing, because she's constantly advertising. I sold this home for $150,000 over asking. I sold this home for $130,000 over asking. I got 20 offers on this property. Would she have gotten the 20 offers or the $150,000 over the asking price if she didn't price it 15% below what she knew it was worth? Probably not, because that 15% can sometimes be $100,000. So they're really getting what the value of the property is, but it helps you in your marketing, and it helps them, because it also, everybody thinks it's, okay, you want to have the highest dollar amount offer, that's the best offer. It's the terms. So if you have enough competition, you obviously, the number you can't really play with too much. There's an appraisal involved, and yes, appraisals were being waived. That's not happening anymore. Just even in the last, 3 weeks, not happening. And it's not abnormal in the fall winter market, but as we know, we're discussing, the market's definitely changing. So see, I got lost. This happens to me. What was I talking about?
Strategic pricing.
Strategic pricing. I was going somewhere.
You were going somewhere, you were saying that the market's changing.
Oh, the appraisal
Appraisals.
terms. I'm really sorry. Sorry, guys. Anyone that's new on this happens to me sometimes, but we're here. I'm gonna do.
You gotta reset yourself once at night before you go to bed.
I do. I
Shut
really do
yourself
have
off.
to shut myself off and turn myself back on.
Otherwise, there you go.
I start to glitch. So this is gonna bring in competition. And competition is not always the highest price. It's terms. So if you can do the strategic pricing, they're still gonna get what their market value is. You wanna share what the market value is. You wanna share with them, this is probably around what we're gonna get over. But what they're more likely is to get waived terms, waived appraisal, waived home inspection. Things that they wouldn't ordinarily let go of, they're letting go of because they know they have to compete, because you brought in a higher percentage of buyers to look at the property. So you're getting more than likely more offers, which means you can negotiate the best terms possible. If you're only, if you're fishing and you only catch 2 fish, you're not really gonna have many options there. But if you're fishing and you catch 20 fish, you can, you have options, what you can eat. So strategic pricing is a big one. Where did I put that little phone so I can get my presentation so I don't get paused? The market conditions. This kind of goes into the market conditions. You want to be aware of the market conditions at all times. This is why real estate, it's kind of like, feels like you're getting your MBA in 90 days is what my coach likes to say. It's because you're not just learning about the process, you're also learning about the environment in which you're working. That is always changing. So if I were to go to a listing appointment in May of this year, and then I go to a listing appointment now, the conversations I'm having are very different. And if I don't stay on top of exactly what the market is like, I'm doing a disservice to my clients. And it's really your job to know that. You're the expert. That's why they're hiring you. That's where you have your value. That's where when Susan says, shouldn't be a conversation of what the value of my services are, because my knowledge is what's going to get you the best deal possible. Because I know what's happening in the market and I can anticipate because I'm paying attention. Whereas somebody who wants to do like a for sale by owner, for instance, they're not paying attention the way you're paying attention. They don't have the insight, they're not on the ground, they're not putting offers in, they're not seeing, they're not seeing it. So that can be a struggle right now during listing appointments, this specific conversation. So I will give you a prime example. I have a home that I've been talking to them since February of this year. So it's actually 2 different properties. I started talking to them in February. I said, yep, the home needs a lot of work. It's been, they ran out of money. So they haven't had a ton of money to maintain the property. And so in the market that we were looking at in February, it didn't look like things were slowing down. Things were still going 1,000 miles an hour, and they continued to until probably July. I had a conversation of, oh, you don't have to do X, Y, and Z. Kitchen is terrible. If this was a different market, maybe update the flooring a little bit, maybe add a backsplash, maybe there was tiles popped off, here and there, fix those small things. In the market that I was talking to them back in February, it was like, you don't have the time or resources to do this, don't worry about it, because someone's gonna come in here, they're gonna hop on the opportunity to have an investment property and they'll do the work. We will price it accordingly, but people are more willing to overlook that now that they're like, hey, Sarah, my tenant left, we can put it on the market now. I have to go back and have the conversation of, oh, well, guys, things have changed. And luckily, this is not the first time they've heard it from me, because I do a decent job of reaching out to my clients and letting them know when I see changes. But I have to tell them, see that kitchen issue that we were talking about, where I said you could just probably leave that one kitchen in that unit. We're not doing that anymore. That you're not gonna have 20 offers to choose from. Now you're probably gonna have maybe 2, 3, if we price it right. And getting someone to strategically price their home is hard, because they have to trust you, and not all clients are just, sure. Sometimes the conversation is, why would I do that? And you have to be comfortable, standing up for what is gonna get them the best value. However, it is their decision. It is always their decision. So if they choose to say, no, I wanna put my house on the market, you will see the difference. You will see, okay, I got 1 or 2 offers, and I know that if they just listened to me, they would have had 10, but there's nothing you can do about that. So for instance, the conversation that I'm having in February of this year is a lot more, a lot better for the seller than the conversation I'm having in September of this year. In September, oh, don't worry about the kitchen. And in February, don't worry about the kitchen, don't worry about any updates, we're gonna sell it, no problem. Now we're having a different kind of conversation. It's also the time of the year. So when you go to a listing appointment and someone says, oh, I don't have to sell, but I'm interested. My house is in good shape. My kids just moved out, no one's making a mess. I can sell my house, it's no big deal. For you, you wanna tell them, well, if you can wait for the spring market. Spring's always gonna be better to introduce a home to the market. More buyers are looking. You wanna let them know, around this time of the year, buyers get burnt out, school's back in session, Christmas is coming. There's very few people that are actually aggressively looking. And it's probably the same kind of attitude that the seller has, let me just see. The buyer's gonna do the same thing. Let me just see if I can get a deal. I don't need to, I'm not super aggressive about it like I would be in the summer. Because they're burnt out, they're tired. Being a buyer in this market is not easy. So you want to be able to speak to the market conditions. Do you guys feel like you have enough information on the market conditions right now and where you're at? Brian, how do you feel? Well, I'm sorry. So, this is why you want to be paying attention. Why you want to be coming to the classes. Usually the classes that we have, again, like Jamie was saying, it's centered around the numbers that she's seeing. So if she sees, oh, okay, there will be a time probably again in the future where short sales will be happening left and right. Then we'll want to have a short sale specialist in here. Now, short sale, it's really not happening because homes are super inflated in price.
A nice class along those lines would be, there's plenty of resources to look at the numbers in Massachusetts, or at least in Massachusetts. But if you're an agent focusing in a certain area, it would be nice to get, and I haven't really looked into it, so maybe it's in front of me and I don't know it, is to be able to say, okay, I'm going to work at least 3 or 4 towns. I want to be able to know how to analyze a market, forecast trends as much as you can do that in those 4 towns, because again, in fact, I just heard a thing today, the trends now are national, but when you get down to the nitty gritty, what's going on in Boston is not the same as what's going on in Norfolk County.
No, not at all.
Okay. And if you're working in Norfolk County, you want to be able to analyze that data.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of times some people will like refer out to a local agent. Sometimes you'll have somebody that's looking like an hour and a half away. Me personally, I have no problem doing the research myself. I'm sure that like now I'm getting to the point where I've hired a buyer specialist, so I don't have the time to do the research I used to do.
Okay.
I would take a client anywhere. If they were 2 hours, my motto used to be, it when people would say, oh, I have a referral, my cousin lives an hour and a half away, I'd be like, I'll drive anywhere for a check. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about how far away it is. That's for me to worry about. If I'm willing to take it on,
Okay.
they're gonna be taken care of. If you have a buyer specialist, like, and that's another thing too, is if you're unaware, if you're kind of outside of your comfort zone, reach out to agents in that area. We have affiliated like offices up there, like any Keller Williams office, if you reach out to them, they're probably gonna be nice, you know, they're gonna, and then if you feel like, okay, this is like way out of my comfort zone, you've already started a conversation with an agent that you can refer out to. And again, like we talked about last week, that referral fee is still a check. It's still a check, and you wanna kind of know where your time is. So if you're on the busier end of things and you have transactions that you're tending to down here, and you have to drive, you know, an hour and a half out west, and you just think, okay, that's gonna take up way too much time, then it might be a reasonable consideration to refer it out.
But that's the kind of, you know, I'm looking for that, 'cause
Yeah,
I'm a numbers person.
yeah, you wanna be able to
And I want
analyze
to be
it.
able to
So
make
what
my
you
own
can do
spreadsheet
is,
and figure it out.
there is a way to, and I won't get into it now because I would have to brush up on it. Is you wanna know what the inventory amount is, so you can tell by how much real estate is in the market. So if it's a seller's market, all of the real estate at that time should be able to, all the properties that are on the market should be able to sell. If it's a seller's market, they're selling in under 6 months. If it's over 6 months, it's considered a buyer's market. That's always the rule that I've gone by. So when there's, again, it's a supply and demand issue. If there's high supply, then the demand is
But
obviously
again,
lower.
that could vary regionally. I mean,
It
right now,
does.
it's all over.
Oh, it does. It
Eventually,
absolutely
it has
does.
to be regional.
You can do like a market analysis in MLS.
Yeah.
You can put like either counties or towns into it, and it will show you like year over year, like what it did last year, what it did this year.
There's a lot of reports you can play with in the whole of the MLS. And Debbie is gonna be doing a lot of training in the MLS of like, okay, what can you utilize from it? Because this is a service that you pay for. So you wanna be getting the most out of it. I talk about setting the expectation a lot, and that again ties back into knowing the market, knowing the strategies, knowing what to expect. When people, I like to have the conversation when I talk about selling and expectations. What I'm really talking about is like, what I'm really talking about is I don't like to deliver it in a way that's scary, but I like to tell them like what could happen that's bad, or what just, it's not necessarily really bad, just what conversations are going to be hard that could potentially come up. So the biggest one is a reduction. No seller wants to reduce their price. It's never a fun conversation, and I learned the hard way. Don't wait until it's time to do a reduction to have the conversation. Have it at the listing appointment. So you want to let them know. So again, back in this thriving spring market, when I'm at my listing appointment, say, hey, do you have any questions? They say, you know, no, or yes, I answer their questions. And I say, I just want to have this conversation with you up front. I don't think it will happen. However, this is my analysis of what the property is worth based on what I've seen, based on the condition. I'm going to introduce this to the market, and there's a chance that buyers don't agree. If the buyers don't agree with our evaluation on price, we have to talk about a reduction. And the reduction can't be 30 days from now because listings go stale. What do you do when you're looking in the MLS for a buyer and you've seen the same home sitting there for 60, 30, 90 days? You just scroll right by it. You're like, oh, has everybody looked at that one? It's still there, whatever. It's usually, there's like a stigma to like, it's too high and the seller's unreasonable. You know, maybe there's something wrong with it. You just go still. And when you're on the buyer side of things, when you're looking on Zillow and Redfin, or if you have them tied into the MLS, which is what you should do, they're gonna just start ignoring those listings too. And you know that because you have exposure to buyers, but sellers don't. So you wanna have that conversation up front of like, hey, if I have to do a reduction, what is your bottom line? Because there is a bottom line. If they're selling their home to roll over the equity into another purchase, there's a bottom line. Because if they don't have the funds to roll over, it just doesn't financially make sense for them. You're wasting your time. We don't want to find that out in the middle of a transaction after you've paid for photography. You know, you've marketed it, you've done all this work, and then you find out, oh, well, you know what? Sorry, we can't sell. It just financially doesn't make sense for us. You want to have that conversation up front. So I always say, like, what's your bottom line? At what point? Because I don't want to have to go to them 8,000 times about the reduction. I wanna already have this conversation up front. So if they wanna list it at $450, I wanna say, if we have to do a reduction, what is your lowest amount? Maybe they say $435. So if we don't get any offers and maybe I get an offer that they would consider not ideal and it's at $445, great, I'll show it to them. Not that I would show it to them anyway, but I'm gonna know already ahead of time, are we countering this because it's $425 and their bottom line is $435, or, you know, I can kind of give an idea of how it's gonna go. I usually like to say that if there's, again, in this market, if I'm not seeing the frenzy that I would like to see, or the amount of interest that I think it should be getting, I'm gonna do a reduction within 2 weeks. I'm a fan of heavy reductions, just because I feel like it's the quickest way to stimulate the listing. If you're stale for 2 weeks, if this thing's been sitting on the market for 2 weeks, again, in this crazy market that we've been in. And I'm getting zero interest. I'm talking no showing requests. The feedback I'm getting is negative, because there's feedback. So when the property gets shown and they think the price is too high, you're gonna hear that loud and clear. That's gonna be there, it's in writing, and it's nice to show to your client. You wanna show them the feedback, you wanna let them know, listen, we had this conversation, it's been 2 weeks now, I don't want your listing to go stale, I highly recommend a $10,000 or $15,000 reduction. That's what I would like to do. If they trust me and they've worked with me before, I like to kind of just go right to their bottom line, because it's more realistic to get a bidding war. Again, things are changing. That's not happening anymore. If something's sitting on the market for 3-4 weeks, it's not the most abnormal. It's still, like, you know, not ideal, but it's not the most abnormal, and that's gonna continue to happen as the market changes. If things are still, there's still an offset, there's still way, like, you know, way more buyers than there are listings, but things are just slowing. They slow this time of the year. It's just the way it's gonna go. Another expectation that I like to set is, I wanna know what their expectations are for showings. Like, this is conversations, like, these people are gonna be in their home, and it's a conversation that you wanna have, and like, do you have any, like, you know, do you want them to take their shoes off? Do you have pets? Like, those kind of conversations. This is why realtors get paid the way we do, is because we're like the family psychologists. It's like, where are we putting the dog? Where are we putting the pet? Can we do an open house? My recommendation is always, hey, if you can plan like a nice little family getaway for a weekend, I'll just bang out an open house 2 days and have it sold. Again, that's changing. And with that change, you want to set the expectation for them that every time there's a showing request, they're gonna have to pack up and get out and make sure that their house is nice and presentable. That's hard. You have kids, and you know, it's difficult. There's like, if you have an animal, like especially if you have like cats and they're not comfortable leaving them there. I've had clients that pack up all in the car, all their pets, all their kids, and they just drive around the block. Like, that's miserable. So you want to make sure that you're setting that expectation that it's going to be hard on them too. Not hard on them, but you want to try and arrange it in a way that's going to be most convenient. My recommendation is always to do an open house and ask them, you know, go to the movies for the day, go to the park for the day, go to Canby Lake for the day, do whatever you got to do, but try and be out of the home for an extended period of time so that I can show it while no one's there. Again, if it goes back to like the reduction part, they're showing their house for longer. And that's kind of the conversation I like to have with that. It's like, you know, I want to get this sold as fast and for the best terms possible. So I would only recommend a reduction unless it's absolutely necessary. I like to tell them I get paid on a percentage basis, as you can see. I'm only benefiting if your home sells for the highest value. I will, you know, if I was a guarantee that I could sell it for $10,000 or $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over and have it sit here for 4 weeks, then great. But I know that that's just not reality. It's just not gonna work out that way. Okay, so the list of services provided. This is, I want to show you guys. I'm gonna try and go over them on my phone, because there would normally be part of this presentation. It's quite a bit, and this is something that I definitely want you guys to have in your listing presentation. Because again, as a new agent, I felt like I had a hard time articulating what exactly my value was, because I just didn't know. I felt like, you know, a little bit of imposter syndrome. Anyone struggle with that here? Anyone? No? No, Brian knows his name. So a list of services. You want to have, so I always like to add, again, the list of services looks like this. I'm gonna, and for anyone on Zoom, I'm gonna forward this over to you guys. I just am not sharing my screen, so I figured it would be more valuable for you to see just like our little notes and be part of the conversation. But this is what it looks like. It's just like a list of services that I have. And it just makes them think like, oh, wow, okay, this is what she's doing. This is why it's costing me this much money to employ this person that's on my own. So the first thing that I write is the professional evaluation of your home by use of a comparative market analysis. That is a nice way to say, I'm running some numbers on your house. So professional evaluation is a good word, the little professional evaluation of your home. And then I'm also adding an aggressive marketing strategy. I'm gonna be, aggressive marketing strategy, a well-prepared marketing packet for prospective buyers. How many of you have gone to an open house and gotten a nice little packet that's like custom, has nice photos, it's like bound? When you go to those open houses, you recognize, you're like, okay, wow. And when you're hosting these open houses and you have these ready and saying those neighbor comes through, there's always the neighbors that are gonna come through. Those are who I wanna see, I want them to see that. I want my client to see it, obviously, this is what I'm doing it for. But people that are potentially gonna sell their home and don't have a realtor yet, they're gonna come in and they're gonna see this nice book I put together for this property, and they're gonna be like, wow, this girl's like got her stuff together, I like that. So a well-prepared marketing packet that you distribute. And if you're in my coaching program, you'd be door knocking ahead of time. That's another thing I like to let them know that I do. You know, I'm gonna be walking your neighborhood ahead of time. I'm gonna be letting people know that we're gonna be hosting an open house. I might do a neighbors only hour for an hour ahead of time. You're gonna be coordinating all of their showings. Another conversation you wanna have is whether they want accompanied showings. Or if they're okay with the lockbox. Most of the time, if you guys are showing properties, it's usually on a lockbox. If it's an accompanied showing, that means that I'm gonna be going to every single appointment that's there. In this market, it gets tough, you know, it's like I would essentially have to do a lot of times to get around this, not get around it, but to basically accommodate this. I see a lot of people doing like twilight open houses, which is like after work, or group showings, which is like, okay, everyone come through to this time, book your appointment, I'll be here for this amount of time.
But in both cases, the owner is out of the house, so
The
the
owner's out of the
lockbox is, the listing agent just shows up by themselves.
The buyer agent.
The buyer agent.
So the buyer agent shows up, uses the lockbox, and they only get that information through showing time. Through showing time. Not everyone uses showing time. I do. Sometimes they mess up and it makes people angry. I personally like showing time. It just makes it easier. And I always like to assure my listing, you know, my sellers, listen, any buyer that comes through here is gonna be with a licensed agent, so you don't have to worry about your property. I do recommend that anything that's valuable of yours, you take out, because if we're gonna have an open house, you never know.
Valuable of the deal,
Yes, that too. And that happens a lot too.
particularly guns.
Yes. Oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Thank
Yeah.
God I've never had to deal with that. Don't put that energy out there for me. All right, coordinate all showings. A competitive pricing to attract qualified buyers. That's the strategic pricing. So you want to talk about competitive pricing. And a lot of what I get into on the competitive pricing end of things is people say they have this idea that if I list it for the top of what I want, like I want $500,000 for my house, that would be like so amazing. That's what I want. But the house is only worth $450,000. If they price it at $500,000, they're just doing themselves a disservice. They're probably gonna end up with less than $450,000. So what I like to tell them is real estate just doesn't work like that. It's not like you ask, you know, for your most, because say I'm gonna put it on for $500,000, I want $500,000, so I'm gonna put it on for $520,000. That way, if someone talks me down $20,000, I've got my number. That's not how it works. It's not how any of this works. It's not how it works in real estate. I always let them know, overpriced listings sit, they don't sell. And there's an appraisal involved. So even if someone gives you your asking price, just because you think your home is worth this number, again, to go back to what Jeffrey says in his lead gen classes, there's the actual price of the home, the sentimental value, and what they think their house is worth. And again, as part of the listing presentation that I have, that I'll go more into right before we do our CMAs, I always like to ask, what is an honest opinion of value of your home? I like to ask them that, because I wanna know if they're gonna be disappointed or not.
Could you ask basically, why do you feel that?
I don't, because it's obvious. We know why they feel that way. They live there. They think it's wonderful. And you honestly, more often than not, people undervalue their home. They think, because they see all what's wrong with it. When you walk into your house, you see all the projects that are undone. You see, when someone with fresh eyes walks into your home, they're like, wow, this house is great. I tend to get clients that tend to think, oh, I'm so sorry, like that's a mess, when in reality, I'm like, you should see some of the houses that I've seen, but it's
Now,
not.
this may be an ethical question. If you've got a seller who knows all the flaws in this house
Yes,
or her house, nothing major, no structural stuff like that,
Yeah.
falling, they just know there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed.
yes.
Is there a strategy, and you kind of just answered this and said no, pricing it a little more so that you know that if these issues come up, you can just throw that away?
No, I think that like if there are issues, the right thing to do, if you're like talking to a seller before you list it, he's like, well, I know X, Y, and Z are wrong. It's part of your job in that listing presentation that makes it
Disclose it.
hard to, not even disclose it, say, fix it. Like, if you can fix this and you know that there's something going on, I would recommend you get ahead of it. If you don't, then we're gonna, if anything, I'm gonna remove it. I'm gonna like say, okay, well, we really need to deduct on price because of this. Or like, I wanna take the condition of the home. If you have two homes, both built in 2016, one's a foreclosure and people ran out of money and they haven't pumped their septic for 4 years and they haven't, serviced their heating system and now that's starting to shut down. It's gonna be different than someone in 2016 that has maintained their home beautifully. Those values are gonna be different.
Okay.
This nice one's gonna help the not taken care of one.
Does that happen in real estate though? Are there agents that will pull that?
They may. I mean, it's not something I would recommend. If you're overpricing a listing in order to try and shave some off and then something happens, it's really not, you're just gonna get fewer offers. And then those few offers are probably gonna have really strict conditions. And you're not gonna have an out. So basically, if you overprice it, you only get one offer. And then they can really nail you to the wall if you're in a situation where you have to sell.
Okay.
You have to deal with it. You don't have any other options of another offer or anything like that.
Okay.
I
have to ask.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Another thing is an evaluation of the buyers coming through. So I don't think not a lot, but I don't think that listing agents do this enough. And I think that it will be more of a problem as things shift, is that you're really supposed to be evaluating all buyers that are coming through. Because if they have a loan that is not gonna work with this property, why wouldn't you give their agent a heads up to say, hey, just so you know, I highly doubt this is gonna go FHA and your client is an FHA buyer? Or you say, okay, this would be like essentially requiring a pre-qual in order to see the home, or a pre-approval, which became really big during COVID because no one wanted people going into their homes unless they knew for sure that they had a shot at buying it. So you should really be requiring a pre-approval to show the home, send it over, and it's really the buyer agent job to do that, but it's your job to make sure.
And just to be clear, I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure I understand. Pre-approval is not connected with the property at this point. It's only connected
Nope.
with the buyer.
It's just that
It's the commitment that when they connect to the property.
Mhm.
Okay.
After all the title work's been done, the appraisal's been done, all that. That's after the offer is done.
I just wanted to
Oh, yeah.
chisel that in my head.
Yep. So this pre-approval is basically saying, so if my listing is listed at $399 and I want to ask for this pre-approval, because there are agents that will try and push someone beyond their budget limits, that does happen. You want to be able to say, oh, well, their pre-qual only says $330. Like, why? Why are you showing them this home at $399? Maybe I call their lender and say, hey, just so you know, your client's coming to look at my listing, but it's listed at $399. Do they have room in their budget? And then you can find out.
And you can call, a listing agent can call
The lender.
a lender for the buyer, even though you have no relationship with
No,
them.
because and honestly, this was more happening, and it does happen more frequently when you're reviewing offers. So at the time that you're reviewing the offers, that's when you're usually getting all the pre-qualification letters. But when COVID happened, again, people just didn't want like random people, because you will get the randos that are just looking to look, and it's like, you have no business looking here, you have no pre-qualification, nothing, or just a nosy neighbor or whatever. So the pre-approval ahead of a showing really came about during COVID. I'm seeing it less and less now, but in my opinion, I feel like that's something we should take. Oh, you know, especially where things are slowing down, you'll have the time to do that, where you're not getting inundated. Well, I mean, well, hopefully you're continuing to get inundated with showing requests, but as things cool off, you want to do that ahead of time. You know, you want to say, hey, okay, yep, no problem, I'll approve your showing as soon as I get a pre-qual. Can I have that? Once you look at it, you're good to go. Because then, you know, they're qualified. As far as like at offer time and talking to the lender, that's something that you should definitely when you're on the buyer side of things, the lender should really be calling the listing agent to say, hey, my client and their agent put an offer in on the property, I just want to call and advocate for my buyer. But if they don't, the lender's going to be waiting for a call. They're going to be anticipating hearing from the listing agent, because I want to know, you know, I want to verify everything that's been written. Like, hey, okay, is this true? Do they not have any home sale contingencies? Is that for sure a thing? Because sometimes they don't write them in, but then you find out when you talk to the lender, that they do have to sell their home in order to buy. Or that they, you know, there could be a situation where they're not, you know, you're comparing it with a bunch of other lenders. So you're basically seeing who is the most qualified and most likely to have their financing not fall apart. So if someone's putting 25% down and then someone's putting 5% down, one's putting 25% down, it's more likely their financing is going to stick together because they're not borrowing as much money. And then the appraisal becomes kind of a non-issue, because a lot of the time a bank won't run an appraisal unless it's requested. And then if it's requested, it's like you're not even borrowing that much money, so your lending can't really fall apart to that. I'm saying, does that make sense?
And the appraisal is based on the selling price of the house, not the borrow.
It's based on, yes. So it's sale price. So schedule professional photos. You don't have to do this, but you can. Like you'll notice. Jen Hamilton does not do photography. She just takes pictures. Throws them on. So you don't need to, but it's become the standard. So a lot of sellers come to expect it. You know, you certainly don't have to do this. Like when I first got into real estate, I just bought myself a really nice camera because I didn't have the money. You know, I was working in finance and I was doing this on the side, and I just didn't see the value in paying somebody, you know, $400 or $300 to come take photos when I could just do it myself. And then I went and did it myself, and this is why I really love leverage, because it's worth every penny in my opinion. Because when you have a busy life or hopefully a busy business, you don't have the time to go out and take photos. But it doesn't take that much time. And a lot of the times, if you wanted to take your own photos, it could be a nice way at your listing appointment to be like, I'll just take the pictures while I'm here. House looks great. Take the pictures, get it on right away. So you can do it either way. Another service that I'm going to be adding is that I'm going to be target marketing your listing to my own sphere of influence, past clients, top agents in the market area, and neighboring homes. So that's what me and Brian talk about a lot. Brian does a lot of door knocking. So if he has an open house, if you're hosting an open house for your listing, I would expect that you would have some sort of information that you can print, put in a door knocker bag, just slip up on the door, whatever you want it to do. I highly recommend the door knocker bags, like $20 for like 2,000 of them. And you want to be not door knocking, walk the neighborhood, let them know we're going to be having an open house. There are a lot of people that are waiting for homes to pop up in certain neighborhoods. So especially if you know it's a sought after neighborhood, you want to be knocking, letting them know. A recommendation that Jamie had for me one time, and it works. It was amazing. I did a neighbors only open house. So like the first hour was just for the neighbors. And this is again, a nice way to get more listings. So I knocked on every door. It was a condo, so it was a lot easier. It was a garden style condo, really beautiful in Stoneham. Knocked on every door. I said, hey, just so you know, we'll be having an open house. It's going to be 3 hours. The first hour is going to be for neighbors only. I want you to come through. I want you to take a look. If you think of anyone that may want to come, the following 2 hours are going to be open. Had cookies, the whole nine for them. And sorry, just keeps happening. I had cookies, the whole nine, and then I'm able to have conversations with people that could potentially benefit from this home selling, because it's going to raise the value of their home, and then it gets their wheels thinking. And then I get their information, I nurture them, and then I sell more properties within that association. In that specific instance, I had the neighbors come through. A neighbor came, he owned 4 units in the building, was cash buyer, and he said, I really like you. I'm not going to buy this one, but I'll be in touch with you. and I stay in touch with them. I make sure I send them emails, I call, I check in on them. These are all things that eventually will turn into more business for me. So a neighbors only, that's another way that, and it's if the listing agent before you just said, yep, I'm gonna put it in the MLS, it's gonna go on Zillow and everything. And they're like, great, you sound amazing. And then you come in and you say, yep, I'm gonna put it on Zillow and I'm gonna do paid ads on Facebook. And I'm also gonna door knock your whole neighborhood. And I'm gonna let everybody know that we're gonna be having an open house. That way, if anyone in your neighborhood is looking and has a more of an emotional attachment to this neighborhood, you get a really good qualified buyer in here that's willing to maybe waive some terms because they're wanting to get into this neighborhood and have. There's plenty of neighborhoods where I come from in Methuen where the people are living in their parents' in-law apartments, waiting for their, a house across the street to pop up or a house down the road. Like I come from an Italian family. That's very Italian, Frank, would you say? People in Revere, specifically that area.
The 4
Huge.
generations have lived in the same house.
Yes, and they want the kids to buy a bigger house and then they'll sell their house and they'll move in with the kids. And guess what? You got 2 listings out of that and a buyer. So this is why there's a benefit to doing that. It doesn't always seem like it because sometimes the turnaround is a little bit slower, but if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're staying in touch with these people, this is just growing your database and your business is your database. So again, this is where you want to be taking any listing that you have and turning it into more. It shouldn't just be a one-off. You should be turning it into more.
Every like 20 houses.
Exactly. And it's a lot of work. And eventually you will reach a point in your business where you won't have to do it anymore. Maybe you will continue to do it because you like it, but you won't have to. Like for me, if I have an open house, I'm more likely to call somebody in the coaching program and say, hey, I'm gonna come for the first hour. I'll do the door knocking and then I'm leaving. You know what I mean? And then that's it. Or I'm gonna do like a quick introduction and then I'm gonna be out. I don't really love open houses anymore. When I was a new agent, I did them all the time. I would do like 4 in a weekend. And that's how I got all the business. Okay. I'm sorry, it's a little not as flowing nicely as my slideshow. Providing feedback from prospective buyers provided by buyer agents. This is like kind of what we've touched on already, and the feedback can be tough, and this is kind of the hard part of being on the listing side of things is the feedback. So again, like to go back to what Frank asked, so if you were to like say, oh, we'll list it for 10 or 20 over because there's some issues with the property, and when it comes up at inspection, it won't affect the price that bad because we've gone over. What happened in that situation is that you would get a lot of feedback that it was overpriced. And on top of that, say it was, what would the imaginary issue be? Let's see. Water in the basement. It was water in the basement. That's like a $7,500 issue. It's real bad.
Missing casings, gimmick woodwork.
That's small stuff though. That stuff, and also like you want to be aware from like the buyer side of things, a way to negotiate around that stuff when you're on the listing side. If someone comes to you at their home inspection and says, oh, well, there was a lot of woodwork that was rotted. There was a lot of, stuff like things that were obvious at the showing. You can say, well, you put an offer in and you looked at the condition of the home when you put the offer in, no? And if I have these seller disclosures, I wrote in the seller disclosures that you received and you signed, saying that these were issues. So no, we're not fixing any of those because you were aware of them when you walked in here and you made your offer based on what you saw. So that is a negotiation tactic you should use on the listing side of things. Don't let people bully your client. It's hard, but you'll get good at it. So for the feedback that you're gonna get, you're gonna have to share with your clients that it's overpriced and then there's water in the basement. And in that situation, you just recommend that they overprice to avoid the situation with water in the basement. Now you're looking not so hot. So feedback is something that, again, I like to set the expectation for. Anything that I know is gonna come up with feedback, I'm telling them ahead of time. If they choose not to fix that, you wanna be able to say, remember when I told you that I thought that the house was not worth $565, but it was worth $550? Well, we're getting a lot of feedback that the home was overpriced and we're not getting offers. And can be hard. It's hard when there's pets, like cats. Cats is a smell that doesn't go away. It's just, people have a cat, you can smell it. That will come up. And that's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but you gotta have it. A lot of times I like to just print the feedback and give it to them and say, hey, this is the feedback. Let's have a discussion about what we can do about these things. Maybe take a look at it, let me know what you think you can handle, and anything else, maybe we have to think about a reduction. That would be the way I would handle that. keep apprised of the market trends, negotiate contracts in your best interest, coordinate transactions from start to finish, and communicate weekly to update you on developments, changes, and suggestions. This is just basically a nice little service thing. Again, I could send to you. Would have been way cooler with the full screen, but I'm sorry, we're having technical difficulties. It's important that you show it. It's also important to have client testimonials. So as you get business, you want to be asking, and again, if you're doing a Buffini program with Ron, he's gonna tell you, it really is like a staple in all business. If there's bad feedback, you want to hear it. You know what I mean? You want to be saying, could I please have feedback if it's negative or positive? I don't care, but I would love to have some honest feedback from you. Most of the time it should be good, but if it's bad, like Jamie was just saying in the shareholder meeting, do not react. It's easy to get defensive, to be like, well, you're nuts. I had to just listen to you for like 3 months about your insanity and we overpriced your house. So, can't do that. So you want to take a second and look at the truth of it. I'll share one of my stories. I'll be vulnerable. I just lost a buyer. Because I was very preoccupied with this productivity coaching program. I'm happy I am. I'm not sad to lose the buyer. I'm lucky enough to where financially it doesn't really affect me, but it's frustrating. And I knew when I lost that buyer, that was on me. I had to bring my son to every showing. He screamed the entire time. I couldn't talk with them. I couldn't show my value about my knowledge of the market. So they went elsewhere. I couldn't respond to them as timely as I'm used to responding to my clients. That's on me. That's not on them. They were a little shady in the way they went about it. They stepped outside their contract. That's a whole other thing. But the service that I provided was not A1 service that I always provide. So I have to own that. And that's something that you do have to get used to. And good agents will own their shit. They will. You have to. Because if you're not going to, and you're doing these things that don't work, and you have someone who's like, and they usually don't want to tell you anything bad. So if you ask for the negative feedback, they're usually going to lead with a million great things and then land on the one negative. And you want to take that, soak it in and use it for next time. If you can't unsee it also. When someone tells you something bad about yourself, you usually remember, no? It's hard to unsee, but it's something that you want to be aware of. But when I always like to include client testimonials in my listing presentation, which is when I started the visual. That's when I wanted to be able to share, look at how happy my other clients are, and I would give them numbers, here's my numbers. Another thing that I like to add to my listing presentation is the affiliate network that I work with. I have lenders, I have attorneys, I have contractors that I work with personally that I can vouch for. I know what home inspection companies are good. I know what home inspection companies might take advantage of the buyer. I know, and I will put them in touch with all these people. It's a resource. And if you get to a higher level, if you get to the point where you're leveraging out and you're doing amazing in your business, and you have a buyer and a listing specialist, you might get to the point where you get to negotiate with your affiliate network. Maybe they get better rates than other people because you're exclusively working with this network of people. So there's also a long-term strategy into working with the same network all the time and developing a really good relationship and giving them a lot of business. Because if they get a lot of business, they should be reciprocated. They should be giving it back to you in other ways. And then in time, it could grow into something more lucrative. We talked about strategic pricing. I have a graphic here that I would ordinarily bring up. And it's essentially, these are just 3 listings that I've had, random listings. Ones that listened to my strategic pricing to a certain degree, and then ones that didn't. The ones that didn't took a hit. They took a hit on price. They did not listen to me. They ended up getting, below what they were asking because they had to negotiate. They didn't have the best terms. And it was still okay because it was a seller's market. Had it not been a seller's market, it would have been a lot worse. Like I listed a property in Lawrence and got $80,000 over the asking price because they listened to me and let me list it how I thought it should be listed with strategic pricing. $80,000 over was great. And when I advertised, hey, Lenox Street in Lawrence, I just sold this property for $80,000 over asking. I got 2 more listings across the street and next door. So it is in the best interest of your client. It's also in the best interest of your business. But you need to be focusing more on what benefits your client. If your client is not cool with it, you can't be like, well, I need to do it because I want to advertise that I sold it for way over. Just put that out there. But it's just, I like to kind of turn things in a way that's going to get more listings. One listing in one neighborhood, circle prospect. That's all you should be doing when you have one listing. Is circle prospecting, circle prospecting, circle prospecting. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. This is the point where I would ask them to give me an honest opinion of their value. And if you have your computer, I want to have you guys do a market analysis. So if you don't have, if you can do the house you live in, if you're working on a home that you're flipping, no, or a multi-family.
Yeah, we're converting it to a two-family.
Okay, so maybe you should do that house, you know, what it's worth. So if you have like a specific property that you're doing any wholesaling on or anything like that, pick that property. If you haven't done a market analysis yet, I want you to try and do it. If you need help, I'm gonna give you guys like, 20 minutes to do a fast one, and let me know. Want me to do one with you?
Yeah, I'll give you a property I'd like you to do.
Here, hang on, let me use the computer.
And it's, the reason I'm picking this one is because it has not been in MLS. Apparently, it's never been in MLS.
Okay,
And I used to live in this house. And I'm curious, I'm dying to, because I checked, is it in MLS, is it for sale yet? And I want to see the pictures.
oh. So do you guys know, if you haven't been inside of a home, where to find the tax card?
Yes.
So if this, because you're doing homes, you're kind of like skipping a step that would probably be necessary if this was a listing appointment. You're doing a house that you're already familiar with. You already have all the information on it. If you don't, you want to go to the city's tax assessor website and pull the tax card. You can pull the deed too if you want. I just find it easier to do a tax card. Everyone, I think, learns different ways. I think there's a way in the MLS you can pull it. The way I do it is I pull the tax card. I print it and I bring it with me to the listing presentation to let them know this is where I got the information to value your home. Sometimes the CMA isn't gonna match the property because the tax card hasn't been updated. A lot of the time, they're not gonna report it on their tax card, if they pay more taxes if they did an addition, or if they did, updated their bathroom or their kitchen or something like that. You might see like, oh, okay, my CMA is gonna be a little bit lower. I'm at the point now where I can kind of know, okay, this means we can increase the price this much. Or as a newer agent, but I would just say, I definitely think that we can do more. I'm gonna adjust this when I get home. I'll give you a call as soon as I get in. And that is like where you want to be making sure you're following up with that.
What about RPR? Can you find out there too?
For tax card, you can probably find some basic information to do with an RPR. I love RPRs. I send them all the time. I think that they're like, it looks like you've done so much work and it's like taking you 2 seconds. When I'm having a conversation with someone, when like we like to talk about those bar scenarios, but I'm randomly talking to someone at a bar, and real estate comes up, that's when I'm pulling an RPR out. I say, I'm gonna send you an RPR, it's gonna give you a range, and then if you like it, we'll set up a market analysis, I'll look at your house. And then we'll do more.
I found errors.
Oh, definitely.
For
It's
one,
not perfect.
they don't say that they have a picture of my house, but it doesn't show that it has a garage, which is clearly visible in the photo. So my philosophy or my priority would be, you go to the tax card, you get the booking page, and then you go to the deed registry to pull the deed.
Yeah, you do have to pull the deed when you're on the listing side of things. It's always good to pull.
And then trace it forward to see if there's any easements.
Yeah.
Okay, and I said that for Anne, I think I talked about this before.
Yeah.
Anne Marie had mentioned they found an easement just before the closing.
Yeah.
And when I said to him, I said, but didn't they catch that? He goes, no, they don't do the title until, you get to the closing, so.
Yeah. Is this house in Mass or New Hampshire?
It's in Massachusetts. Norfolk County, Brookline, Massachusetts. I'm just trying to think if this is the corner or not. I don't
Open my
know.
keychain. Where is it?
It's Brookline, Massachusetts. The address is 32 Davis Avenue.
32 Davis.
For 7 years.
I have a house like that I want to buy. So
I wouldn't buy it because of the lot that it's on, but I love the house itself.
Some houses just have good vibes.
And yeah, I keep checking. I want to see the pictures inside. If it's ever an open house, I'd go there, not be one of those people that has no intention of buying.
So honestly, I don't mind as long as they tell me. Most of the time, like if
Well, I'll
they're just
tell
like,
them right
hey, I'm
away.
just,
I'll
you
say I'm
know.
a realtor, I'm not gonna buy, I'm just look around, I won't give them my history of
Yeah.
the house and stuff.
I've had people pull up to my house that I live in and like take pictures and I'm like, and they're all like people that have lived in the home. And my grandparents lived in that house for 40 years before. So like these are people that lived there like a long time ago. And they still show up and are like, oh, I love this house. I have such good memories here.
Yeah.
I had a lady apparently got married in my backyard. She had cancer. She wanted to come back. And I told her, come back anytime. You can come, go hang out back there. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I never heard from her. What did you say? It's 32.
Davis Avenue.
You know what the owner's last name is?
It's a couple, they're two separate last names. I think one of them is Correa. That's the woman, I forget what the guy's name is.
What's the point of the tax assessment? Like,
I pull it up to get like bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, book and page number for the deed. There's like information like that, just so I know like what I'm working with. Style of the home. Sometimes the style of the home isn't obvious, like if it's a modified colonial or if it's a raised ranch or something like that. That's what I'm looking for. Do you need help?
No, I got it. I already did
Is
it.
this it?
Yeah.
So this house is it's valued at 1.1 million.
Yeah.
It was sold in 2017.
Really?
Sale price of $1.
Oh. I never got the MLS. So how do you do a CMA on a house like that?
So basically what I'm doing now, I'm looking at this and I would print this. I'm on paper. I would print this to have and take notes on it. So the year was built in 1900. So I'm going over to the MLS. I'm gonna do, you can do a cloud CMA. I'm gonna do an old school CMA. I'm gonna do a CMA. We're gonna call this Frank. CMA. Frank, you're the owner. What's your last name? How do I not know this?
Ford.
I should know this. Ford. Why did I not know this? Fulford. Ford. I don't know. I remember that. My last name is Fulford until recently.
Just like the other one.
Okay. 32.
No, I'm not related to him.
Only I wasn't gonna use my house as an investment property, I should definitely sell it.
I was. Nice to know. And honestly, I'm gonna have you guys run this first, but I
It
have a
appraises for
little.
like, well, based on fees, it's like $250,000, $300,000 more than what our mortgage is.
Yeah,
I mean, it already appraised over $100,000 when we bought it,
Oh, you've been there.
8 years.
Okay.
But we, like I said, we got it for an absolute steal.
Oh, 2, 4, 4, 5. So what I've done here is I've set up the market analysis, creating a new one. Leave me alone, Microsoft Edge. So this was built in 1900.
Right.
That makes it hard. I mean, maybe not because in the area, there's probably a bunch of houses that were built in 1900, but if
They
they
were all
haven't-
built around the same time.
but if they haven't sold recently,
And a lot of them are multi-families that were converted to condos.
there's also a building sketch. Oh, and there's a GIS view, so you can see parks and stuff like that.
And there's basically no land around the house. There's a 3-decker in the back.
I can see it from the photo, it's tight.
That's one of the big flaws with that.
1,400 square feet, and it's valued at,
Do you know Brookline at all?
yeah,
Okay, it's walking distance.
it's a good call. Honestly, these homes I don't think they'll ever sell because when I went to college in Boston, I couldn't afford, my college was in Back Bay. Like, yeah, I can afford apartment in Back Bay, no. I was not one of those people who had rich parents and sent their kids there. I was there borrowing a lot of money to be there. And I was having to look in Alston, Brooklyn, Jamaica Plain, all those areas for apartments. And the rent was still insane, but it was semi-manageable. So at least this area, like, I feel like they never sell because it's just a guaranteed passive income. Especially
Well,
if they
the thing about that house is it's sort of walking distance to the Green Line.
Yeah, That's what
And
Brookline
it's
is?
kind of walking distance to Brookline High School.
nice.
Okay. It's the location. It's not the house, it's not the lot.
Oh, yeah.
Because the inside the house is beautiful.
Okay, so I'm saving my subject property. Now I'm gonna search the MLS. I'll bring it over here so you can see it. So at this point, I'm here. I'm searching the MLS for solds. I like to do under agreement and sold, just because I think sometimes it's not. Just because I want to see what I'm competing with. So we're gonna do 4 bedrooms, bathrooms. Proposals, there's 92. Oh, this was I also know what it's out. Looks like a colonial.
But it's also walking distance to this market. Months ago. The park is utilized, but it's walking city park.
Yeah, I'm also gonna look at so like styles.
By the way. I mean, this is what I want to know how to do.
Yeah,
The other ones, so.
You don't need to know this. Hey, what's up? I'm teaching class, are you okay? So. One. Two. So then I might do like. I like to be more conservative, so you'll notice when I do bedrooms, I'm doing 3 or 4, not 4 or 5. Because 5 is gonna tick it up, and I would rather underprice.
So how many beds that claim? 4 bedrooms?
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that would be feedback. So like if this, I put this on and I'm like, why, this is where I like to have the conversation of, okay, I'm gonna put this on the market, but the market might not agree with our evaluation on price. That small bedroom might be enough to where people are like, this is really a 3-bedroom house, and I'm not paying this much for this.
Oh, I mean, it was my bedroom.
Yeah, no, and that for some, so if it's broad, you'll hear the feedback a lot. If it's not, you might get it once or twice, and then you're still getting offers, so it's irrelevant. But no, there's more.
It's that price.
These are ranches. The Tudor style home. That's what makes me hesitant to. Yeah, but this is not a Tudor. So when I say like, oh, I'm not sure if I would use this, it's because wouldn't appraiser use this? That's what I'm thinking. So this is really beautiful, really modern, really updated. And again, this is where you want to take into consideration. So this was built in 1940. So automatically, it's 40 years newer. Realistically, is it going to make that big of a difference because they're both old? No. But you can see that it's sold for. So I'll add this. This is 227 Bonad Road. So I'm gonna go back. So I'm gonna do. Honestly, I think I'm gonna do. 19. Again, see, this is where I'm playing around with it, 'cause I'm like, no, I'm
Right.
getting what I want. Or not what I want, but what I need to really get an accurate account of what it costs. And if it's reduced it. So this is a detached ranch. I might throw it in there because this is like a small colonial. This is not like a colonial. Like, is that really comparable to this? I don't know. Probably not, but we're gonna throw it in there. We're gonna throw these in there because what we're working with. And this is why it's like, this would be a CMA that's gonna take some time. So I'm gonna wanna do it way ahead of time, and I'm gonna wanna ask for review, like of another agent. And I'm gonna maybe wanna reach out to an appraiser and be like, hey, I got this listing in Brookline. I don't wanna be advised on what the value is, but like, what are some comparable towns that you would say that I can go into? Because if I'm only getting 3 in Brookline and none of them make sense, I'm gonna have to go into another town, or I'm gonna have to go farther back. So what we can do is go back. So this is in the last 6 months, so maybe I do the last 18 months. Counting down their time. So it's like an art.
Right, no, I just wanted to see how you're gonna, because I've tried to do this.
This is what I would be doing. This is what I would be doing if you were like, hey, can we do a listing appointment here? This is what I'd be playing around with. This is a colonial, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, full house square footage, but.
Because you definitely want to take a list.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
mean, shoot, well,
It's a really good font. There's 2 bathrooms. 24 square feet, both 1925. 209 Reservoir Road. Dash ranch, no. Colonial, 4 bedroom, 1.5 bath. The only reason why I'm not touching this is because it's 20 square feet. That's like almost. 21, I'll probably do an adjustment. So I'll take that for now. This colonial. Again, we're gonna have to do an adjustment. So I'm gonna add my 3 comps. I should have about 4. I try to get at minimum, I try to get 4. Working with, you don't want to work with what you can work with. I wouldn't want to go back farther than 18 months. Even doing this is like, 2020 was weird. So it's making realtors' jobs very hard. Because like the market in 2020 wasn't like 2019. And it's not like 2021. So it's like, I'm doing CMA in 2021. Do I use comps for 2020? And if I'm doing the comp CMA in 2020, it was hard. It's like
would it be wise to just skip 20?
you're gonna want to use it. Because you have to think, what's the appraiser gonna use? The appraiser can't skip a whole year of inventory. They have to use it. And it's what the value is. It's just created a lot of inflation. So like we had a lot of cash flowing around for whatever reason. When that cash was flying around and deals were closing for way more than what they were actually worth, that becomes a comp, it becomes a solid comp. So then that comp is gonna raise the value of all of the homes in the neighborhood. Because when I go to price this home and that other home got, an extra $40,000 in cash to make up the difference in the appraised value versus the purchase price, that means all the homes that fit that description just got a $40,000 boost essentially. So that's why it creates a little bit of an issue.
How did you set it up so you saw all the, like you had them all?
The pictures.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking you earlier. I was like, here's it set up weird. I'll come over and take a look at yours. So you can look at the picture, right?
Yeah.
It's just easier. Okay. So we'll go to price adjustments here. So this adjustment here, this has a garage. This house doesn't have a garage. So I'm gonna take off 20 for the garage, and then I'm also going to, so like this one has, where's the square footage?
That's why I'm thinking if I go back into that house.
I know, it's never what you think it's gonna be. Wow. Because these are like over 2,000 square feet. these ones, Just gonna save that. And I'm gonna describe that as I'm taking 20,000 off the garage. And then I'm going to remove, say, the square footage. Take off.
How would you get? Because there is very little land around this.
It's gonna be,
The parking is 3 bedroom in the back, now all condos. There's this big area in the middle where they share parking.
so it's a shared parking situation.
Yeah, and now there used to be gravel. And they have, now it's all paved and the parking stalls are signed,
Okay,
but it's a common driveway.
it's shared driveway.
Yeah, so if you.
That's just kind of like, you definitely don't want to disclose that this is a shared driveway situation, but
But how does that affect the price? Because some of these, they may have the driveway.
it's gonna affect the price. I would say, I would get there. This is one of those things that's like, okay, it's a shared driveway. And this might be a question where I would ask somebody, like, what do you think that it's gonna affect the value if it's a shared driveway? Like, I might go ask Art or Steve or somebody else, like, I'm not, I'm really not positive. If I go there and like, if the amenities and the distance to the green line is gonna compensate for having a shared driveway, then is it really gonna affect the price? We're gonna put it on the market, see what happens. If the feedback is shared driveway, no parking, then we'll know, okay. And I would have that discussion with them, like, listen, I don't know, I'm not sure how the shared driveway is gonna affect this, because your distance to the green line is great. So that might offset the fact that you have a shared driveway.
I mean, it's a good walk. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
happy walk, but it's not undoable.
No,
And
when
my
you're moving to the
grandfather-
city, well, that's part of it, you're walking.
I mean,
It's
the
just
one
part of
thing
it.
about the shared driveway, was my father had to go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, so he had to do it first. He had to shovel half the driveway to get out. And then everybody else got up half the driveway to shovel.
Yeah.
That was one of the things. We would-
You know, you wish they kept it?
No, not because of the lot situation and stuff, and the taxes there are $10,000. I live in Brookline. I know Brookline pretty well. So I think
It's good for investment. My family sold our multifamily in Cambridge. And I was like, so this is what it's gonna come out as. So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking, okay, this is what I'm working with for the subject property. Two films that chose. And this is sale price versus list price. So they're selling for over what they're asking for. Which could be strategic pricing or could just be competitive.
Right.
So these are the properties. So when I'm presenting this, I'm saying this is a comp that I think is valuable. However, I deducted about 20,000 to the garage. So that's something that I would know. And like this one is bigger. So I took $10,000 off this one because it's got, a substantial amount of additional square footage that you don't have. And this house was a pretty big comp. So now these are all of them next to each other so that people can see what's price per sale price. This is also like where you then get to have that strategic pricing conversation of like, okay, when they listed it lower, they got more. You can see. So the indicated value by sale comparison approach is 1.4 million, which is about what the tax card said. Not all tax cards give you the.
No, tax card are notoriously.
They're supposed to be, they're 10 more, but this one was. So
But RPI had it at 1.1.
sometimes it's a range.
Yeah.
It's a range on RPR. And I tell people when I send them the RPR, this is not, they don't really pay attention so much to like the number, pay attention to the range. You're likely gonna fall somewhere within that range. And if I look at it and I see it's way off, I'm not gonna send it to them,
Okay, so 1.4 million.
Yes, this is what.
But I think in the hour, we'll probably spend more time on it. Broadway is
Oh, it was been, well, I would also,
Somebody with
this
a
might be
car.
like my thesis, and then I'd be like, hey, do you mind if I come through and take a look at the property?
Yeah.
And then I'll look at the property, and then I would be able to be like, oh, okay, now I have an idea of this, and then I would do the research, I would talk to someone about, hey, you know, you sell in this area, I'm not really sure how this
But
shared
there's really,
driveway.
in a house like that, there's usually one place to park his car. My father, when he had a state car, he managed to squeeze a second car
Yeah,
in there, but it's really for one spot. And something like that would probably be two incomes. So,
Yeah. but a lot of people, in Boston store their car somewhere, they pay for permanent parking somewhere, that's what I'm saying.
You know where the Friary is? Up behind the high school, it used to be.
I don't
behind the
think
high school. They were selling parking spaces up there for about 10, 15 years ago.
And sometimes you can,
Just
you
the
can buy,
parking spots.
yeah, you can buy parking spots. He's
But-
very fascinating. I don't want to.
Is your MLS?
I think it's, I've messed around with mine before.
MLS, when I log on, sometimes it gives you this big announcement block and I can't get rid of it. I just want to go to the. I want to
It
go to a
always
place
does
where I
that.
used to land. How do I stop it from doing that?
Is this in Mass New Hampshire?
Yes. I get this big box making some kind of an announcement.
I think that's just the, I don't know. I wanna get. I know, this is running over. Let me get. Actually, but or it's not really, you know. They're all married over there, but I'll find out. I'll figure out how to fix that for you. Okay.
There's a woman who bought my, used to live in my house one day, it was not long after we bought it. She pulled over, and said, "Do you live here?" And I said, "What is it?" "I grew up in this house." She said, "Is the basement still all dirt floor?" And I said, "Oh, no, it's, this cement now." She said, "Oh, I'd love to come in one day with my brother." And I said, "Sure." Like, drive by when they were here, like, feel free to come on by. She never came back again.
I thought about asking, I don't know whether it's, but with all the weirdos out there.
Yeah.
I don't want to get it.
The worst they can say is no,
I
right?
know.
I think you're a weirdo.
Yeah, I just thought, you know, I'm a hardware.
Right.
Yeah, it's too far.
Yeah.
I control the pictures of me, you know, so it's 4 years old.
Yeah. I thought it was cool when she said that she like grew up in the house and stuff, like, and it's, I mean, we gutted the house when we bought it, but I'm sure it had already had a ton of changes from when she grew up, so she grew up and it was, you know.
Well, I know they took out the pantry. I heard that someone took out the pantry. And, there's a second bathroom. And I'd love to know what it did with the workbench.
So this is where-
We left that.
I'll show you the numbers.
I'll have to do that.
Just to show you, it probably is, yeah. Sometimes the mortgage
I could,
rate
I could run the inside of that.
What about the tax?
The tax assessment is more of what.
And the tech house before.
What the tax on, like, these,
Yes.
especially in New Hampshire, yeah. It really goes on the
And it was like-
taxes so high already. But where this is, so this is my only.
Means nothing.
Where it's like.
That house,
1,600,
some
So
of
it's not good enough for something like that.
Cash.
Yeah, I get that. I remember my parents
So
sold
I
our
stay
child.
1,000 hours. And it sucks.
But my dad would
want
go,
to
oh, short sale.
But no, like, what she said, you should have checked it. Because I knew some of the patients were not.
Good fun, actually.
Especially when we grew up,
Yes.
found that.
Now
I had it.
over 18, so.
My two brothers had. So don't want to look.
Yeah, this is my house. This is my husband's truck, this is my husband's truck. He has this truck, well, it's not this one anymore, he has an updated one. He has, this is my old. He has this truck and then he has his Nissan 360 and a motorcycle and I have my little mini van. So we take up our parking lot plus like 2 spots on the street.
Yeah.
Because he has so many work vehicles that.
Walk from the high school.
So what I might do is, how many minutes?
Brookline Village train station. So that's, I think, is one of the selling things.
Grocery store, so I get my kids.
Oh, it will. So what I do, so this is where the current. So I would go back. So I would go. I do that. And then- but- oh,
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. So what did your number come back at?
So I didn't get to officially finish it, but I'm thinking like 475.
475-ish. See, and when you get in there and start looking at properties, it just makes you feel more comfortable. Because when someone approaches you and says, hey, what do you think my house is worth? You can be like, oh, well, I was just looking at the film the other day. What kind of house you got? About this much, but you want to live the same way. Also, what I want you guys to do here is, I want you to practice more CMAs. Like, just go in and fool around. And what, if you're in the coaching program, we're gonna put together a listing appointment, a listing presentation. And I want you to practice it. I want you to find people that you feel comfortable being vulnerable with. And I want you to go to them and say, hey, I know you know how to do the business of real estate. I have a listing presentation. Would you mind if I did a CMA on your house? This is not about selling your house. This is just me being able to practice what I have to do to strangers. And I want you to give me your feedback on what I could improve on. And then when you do it, take the feedback, even if it's negative, take the hit, cry in your car later, deal with it
What's
then.
the agenda for tomorrow?
Oh, Steve, honestly, my brain is.
Okay, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it, that's why I asked.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
I don't think, no, yeah. Zoom. All I'm gonna
Maybe,
do is I'm gonna
maybe.
Zoom. Anyway, do the listing presentation, and then ask at the
Thank you.
end of the presentation, is there anyone you know that can benefit from this?
Okay. Can you, so I'm having my last like meetings with Michael.
Yeah.
And he wants me, so I have a potential person, so he wants me to put together like paperwork and stuff I would need to bring to a buyer presentation. And I feel like we cannot remember where you can find the paperwork. Like
So, it's in DocuSign.
that's what it is. I knew there was something.
So it's in
I'm like looking
DocuSign.
everywhere
If you
else.
have it linked to you should have it linked to your MAR, which is your Mass Association of Realtors, or if you're part of NAR, you'd be part of
Yeah.
that. And then from there, you can pull whatever you need for templates.
That's what it is.
And
No, it's- I'm
when
like
you
looking at
join,
KW command and I'm like,
Is it command to docs?
you can link
Oh,
it, like you can
yeah,
go
through.
to DocuSign through Command, yeah, you
Oh.
can definitely do that. And you wanna create an opportunity in Command and then go from there.
okay.
And I'm sure that he'll go over that with you at some point if he hasn't already. And then,
I did it with Lori, she's my mentor, and I did it with her once before, but it was a while ago, and I was just like drawing with a complete blank. And I'm like, how can I meet
I would
with
call
them again
Lori,
tomorrow?
never. Lori's so sweet, I
Yeah.
love Lori.
She's the one that helped me buy my house.
She's the best.
Did her job, we stayed in contact.
Thanks, guys.